Okay, so let's start with where were you born?
I was actually born at home on what they call Seminary Road now. November 14th, actually November 13th, 1941. I was born at home, delivered by Rosamond Oka Hill and my great aunt Adeline Ninham.
Can you tell me a bit about your family and your childhood?
Well, I was raised on a farm there with 4 sisters and 1 brother, and a lot of hard work, a lot of manual work, and pretty much back then when we used to go to the country schools, so it was either walk 2 miles to Oneida to the St. Joe's, and then later they changed the school district, so then I went to Silbury Summit for a couple more years. And then they changed the school district again when I was like in the 6th grade, and then they bused us to Seymour. So I finished grade school in Seymour, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And then I went to Seymour High School, graduated there in 1960. I had a difficult time finishing school because my dad was crippled, and he used to work at the mill to supplement our income on the farm. And the older children in my family had already grown up and left. So I was pretty much left for most of the work. So I had a hard time finishing school because I was working at home all the time. So actually when I was a senior, over that Christmas vacation or whatever, I kind of got disgusted and trying to finish school, so I quit over the Christmas vacation there, and I stayed home for, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, and they convinced me to go back and finish, so I went back and finished school, but I had a difficult time because I was always behind because I was home doing farm work.
So what pushed you to join the military?
Well, my brother joined when he was 16 years old. I had a cousin that is still MIA. He was killed in the Korean War. He was 16 when he joined, and he was 18 when he got killed. And I knew when I graduated, I wasn't financially able to go to college. And so I kind of like accepted the challenge to join the Marine Corps, and kind of see how well I could do at being in the Marine Corps. The challenge, I accepted the challenge.
Let's get into basic training. Where was your basic training?
My basic training was in Marine Corps Recruit Depot in San Diego.
How long was it?
I think it was, I don't know if I'm right, it might have been 12 weeks, or it could have been more than that, but I'm pretty sure it was at least 12 weeks.
Do you remember what the camp looked like, or the facilities there, what it was like?
Yeah, it was, we actually lived in Quonset huts at the time, metal huts, brown huts, and that's what all the recruits had for, that's where they stayed at that time. And since then it's been rebuilt, but back then that's all it was, Quonset huts, hot in the summer, blacktop.
Was the how was the living like there? Like were you in your own room, or?
Well, you're in whatever platoon you're with, you're all in the same building together. There was like maybe a couple of squads in one building, a couple of squads in another building, and that's where you lived in that Quonset hut. You were all, like bunk beds in there, and so it's pretty crowded space.
What was your MOS?
Well, actually, I got my MOS after I left infantry training, and When I left boot camp, I was the top graduate out of 260 recruits, and so they asked me if I wanted to go to drafting and surveying school in San Diego, and I really had enough of California and San Diego, so I told the drill instructor I'd rather join the infantry and be able to travel rather than be stuck in California. So that's what I did. I joined the 1st Marine Division, and then I spent almost 2 years with the 1st Marine Division in California before we left for overseas. I trained with the infantry there in California.
Do you remember what the drill sergeants and what they were like?
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for the drill sergeants. They're very tough, very thorough, very dedicated, and no nonsense people, because they're actually preparing you for combat and that discipline. You have to learn that when you're ordered to do something, you can't think about it. You have to do it, and that's the way they were. Pretty much no nonsense guys. And when we go to boot camp, those drill instructors stay with us from the time that we join till the time we graduate. So they have to spend a lot of time away from their families. They basically live with us, And then later on, when we get a little bit further into training and that, then they kind of take turns. We had 3 drill instructors, a senior drill instructor and 2 juniors, and yeah, they basically, lived with us 24/7,
Did you make any friends?
Yeah, I'm easy to make friends. I always had a lot of friends. In the Marine Corps, they tell you not to make friends; they're military acquaintances. And the reason they do that is because, like when you're in combat or something and somebody gets killed, you can't stop and mourn that. You have to go on, So that's what they always tell you. You don't have any friends; you have military acquaintances.
What was some of the things you guys would do for fun?
Pardon?
What were some things you would do for fun?
Oh, I pretty much stayed on base a lot, and we had guys that played football, and sometimes even if we didn't have a football, we'd use a canteen and we'd play, make up our own sports. They had usually had some outdoor basketball courts, things like that, and then once in a while you could get leave, and if you wore a uniform, you might get a pass to Disneyland, or you could get passes to go to maybe the football games at the Coliseum, things like that, special services. So stuff like that. Otherwise, we just kind of did our own thing, I guess.
What would an average day be like? What was your regular regimen that you would do?
Well, if you're in the infantry, and I suppose each unit is a little bit different, as far as their training goes. Like almost every morning when we woke up, when we were in infantry, we had to go for several miles for a run. And then after we did that, then we'd have to go back to our barracks and get ready for the morning meal. And then after that, there was always some training or something to do every day. Everything was scheduled for you to do every day, so you never know way ahead of time what that was going to be, but they had everything scheduled for you.
Did you have any advanced training while you were there?
Just basically infantry training, It's like I was one of the things that I was a machine gunner. So I had the machine gunner. We trained with our machine gunners with the infantry, how they would interact with the riflemen and the rest of the people. So when you train, you constantly trained with how your placements of your machine guns were, how you were gonna fields of fire and all that type of thing. So and my machine gun weighed 50 pounds, and until you're humping that every day when you go to the field, you gotta, that's part of your job, you know, so.
So, where was your first assignment?
As far as, well, when I was with the infantry, with the 1st Marine Division, we did some pre-training before we went overseas. So one of them was, I went to a mountain leadership school in the Sierra Nevadas, Bridgeport, California. And I think that was several weeks of training up there in the mountains. And then after we got through training there, I went back to Camp Pendleton. That's where my main base was. And then not too many weeks later, then we went to desert training at 29 Palms in the Mojave Desert. So then we were like 6 weeks out there in the desert. And after we came back, then it wasn't probably too long after that before we got shipped out to Southeast Asia. And then I went from the 1st Marines to the 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, 3rd Marine Division. That was my next regiment that I was with, was the 3rd Marine Division. And we went overseas. We left San Diego, and it took us like pretty close to 26 days by ship to Yokohama, Japan, and then from Yokohama, Japan to our permanent duty station at Camp Hansen, Okinawa.
How were you alerted that you were going to be deployed?
Well, that there was all pre-planned, so it was like it was a scheduled deployment, you know. After you spend so much time at Camp Pendleton, you're going to deploy someplace, you know. And so you might go, if you go with the 6th Fleet, you're going to go to the Mediterranean. If you go with the 7th Fleet, you're going to go to like Southeast Asia.
How do you remember how you felt when you were shipping out?
No, well, you know, it wasn't really too bad for me because I was pretty much dedicated to the Marine Corps at that time. So whatever they asked me to do or whatever I had to do, it like didn't bother me. And it's like all I did was continually train for the job that I had, and accepted that, and I tried to be as fit mentally and physically as I could be, you know, as far as, because the work is hard, you know, and it's a lot of mental toughness.
What were your first impressions when you got there?
Well, it wasn't too bad. It was almost like Camp Pendleton, except you're in Southeast Asia, and the base we went to, Camp Hansen, was a new base. We were the first Marines to occupy that base. So it was like we went to the base, and then outside the base was a place called Kin Village. So a lot of those businesses and everything like that, they depend on the military bases. So it was like this little village was there, and then all the 9th Marines came in there, and then pretty soon it's growing up. You got bars, barber shops, karate shops, all these different things that end up building right outside the base to take advantage of the Marine Corps money that's there, you know.
What was your life like there? What was a typical day like?
Well, when I first got there, there was the Marines had a baseball team there, and so I went out, you're temporary assigned duty. You can go out, and if you make the team, you'll get temporary assigned to that what occupation, whatever it is. So I was playing baseball. I just started playing baseball for the Marine Corps baseball team. And one of the things that was going to happen was the Detroit Tigers that had won the World Series, and they were coming over to play an exhibition game against us. So I would have had a chance to play against Harvey Keene and Mickey Lolich and all these guys. But what happened was, at the same time when I was playing, the Cuban crisis came up when the Bay of Pigs invasion was scheduled. So when you're in the infantry like that, if anything like that comes up, and we were called to be the backup for the Bay of Pigs invasion, so I was cut from the baseball team and had to go back to my unit. And then we went to this Kadena Air Force Base, which is on Okinawa, and we had all our equipment and gear ready to go. We were all stayed on the runway. We were waiting to get shipped out to a Cuban invasion. And so we just basically camped out on the runway waiting for the planes to pick us up. And that was at the time JFK called it off, and the Cubans went in and basically got slaughtered because they didn't have no backup that they were promised from the United States government.
So that sounded like a pretty memorable experience, but are there any others that you can recall?
Well, after that was over, and they canceled us from going there. So then when I was on base, I used to work out all the time because I had this heavy load I had to carry. I carried that machine gun and all that stuff, so I had to be physically fit all the time. So I used to go to they had a local gym, a Marine Corps gym or something. I'd go down there and work out when I ever had spare time. So myself, my A gunner, and a couple other guys were working out down there, and it happened that the football coach for the Marine Corps football team was there, and then he asked us if we'd go out for the Marine Corps football team, the 9th Marine football team. So we went out, and different guys. There was maybe like 100 guys out for the football team, so pretty big competition. A lot of officers and a lot of ex-college football players, some pros, and so we went out and made the football teams. So that was like in July. So from July until right around December 7th or somewhere in there, I was playing football with the 9th Marines, and we won the Far East Championship over there. We played 3 other Marine Corps teams. We went to Korea and played a couple teams in Korea. We used to fly there, and then I think it was December 7th of '62. We played the champions from Korea football team in Okinawa, and we beat them for the Far East Championship.
Were there any people that you that stood out to you, or any, I guess, memorable people?
Oh, not really that much. It's hard to say. It's like the guys in my unit. We were pretty close knit unit. Mm-hmm. Other than that, you don't get too friendly with a lot of other people. There was other Oneidas that I met that was like a good experience. One time when I was going out on the field, and somebody called my name, and I look, and here it was Ken Webster. He was from Oneida, and he was in the Marine Corps at that time, and he was MP. And it was kind of, it was good to see. It was like somebody from home. And then once in a while, Larry Webster, he was in the Marine Corps also. And every once in a while I would bump into him, so it was good to see somebody from home.
So where did you go from there? Where else were you deployed?
Well, after after we won that championship in football, it's like my unit had already left. The 9th Marines had already boarded ship and with the 7th Fleet. So, 7th Fleet Marine Force, Expeditionary Force. So they were already gone when I got through playing football. So they trucked me up to Kadena Air Force Base with all my equipment, and some of us from the football team that were in the 9th Marines, they flew a C-130 to Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. And the 7th Fleet came in there, and that's where I joined the 7th Fleet. That was, my unit was already there. They were already deployed for quite a while.
What were the living conditions like? What was it like to eat, sleep, and how was bathing and stuff?
Like on ship is difficult. It's crowded. You have very small space. For example, you have like where you live, you have like 2 posts, and then you have like these canvas beds that flip up and down. And on each side, a real narrow hall, and then on each side there are 6 bunks, and you have about a foot or so space in between them, and that's your space. So it's like that picture I showed you of those people down in a hole. It's pretty much like cattle, really it is. It's very difficult, very poor living conditions. When you first get out of port, you have like fresh food in that, and that lasts for a couple of days, and then pretty soon you're on powdered milk, powdered eggs, canned food and that. So it's not a fun life. It's pretty difficult, crowded, and boring.
What was your contact like with home?
I really didn't write home much or anything like that. I pretty much just concentrated on what I was doing. Once in a while, the chaplain would get a hold of me and say, I see you haven't been writing home, or like that, So, okay, I'll write home, It's like, but I really wasn't a big person to write home, or, I didn't, my life was with the Marines that are over there, and that's pretty much what I concentrated on,
All right. So did you experience combat?
I was lucky. What happened was I was a machine gunner with the 7th Fleet, and it was like my time to young guys came in and started to rotate in, and so I had to give up my machine gun to my replacement, and so I was a pistol expert, and on ship they needed security, and they needed somebody that was a expert with a .45 for security. So that was kind of a blessing that I ended up giving up my machine gun and being security on ship. And so a lot of times when they deployed to a different place or what, I didn't have to go because I was on the ship. And I used to be the pay guard for the money. Whenever they paid out, they always had to have a pistol expert there with a .45 guarding the money on payroll. They paid right on ship before they left ship, so that was part of my duty, was security.
So, okay. So then you didn't have to serve in, or you didn't serve in actual combat, right?
No, I didn't have to go ashore in Vietnam.
So tell me about your discharge from the military.
Well, actually, before my discharge, after I got back from Southeast Asia, then they sent me to Paris Island to be an instructor. So I spent the last year of my enlistment as an instructor. They offered me 2 options: one to be a military police or to be a marksmanship instructor. So I opted for the marksmanship instructor school, and I went to school, and then I instructed recruits for a year. And it was kind of ironic, but it's part of my, other than just instructing recruits, we ended up, there was like 5 of us that got picked to train some of the survivors from the Bay of Pigs invasion, Cuban, anti-Castro Cubans. So then I served my time there until July 17th of 1964. And then I was discharged from active duty, but I was still in the reserves for 2 more years yet.
So when you were in the reserves, you were brought back to the United States, right?
Right.
Okay. How can you describe that trip back?
Well, see, what happened was I came in, after I came back by ship again, I came back almost a month from Yokohama, Japan to Hawaii. And I didn't get off the ship in Hawaii because it's too expensive there. So then we went from Hawaii to the port in San Diego, and that's where I got sent home from there. And then I went to Parris Island, and after I was in Parris Island, on July 17th of 1964, and I got discharged, sent home, and then I actually had my own car, so I drove home from there. And then I spent, well, actually I spent 2 years in active reserves, but in March of 1965, they sent me a letter saying that look for orders within the next month, and they asked me to respond to their letter, what my status was, and my wife was going to have my daughter at the same month. So when I responded to them on that, and that before they sent me another letter that I would have to go back in because they could pull me back in because I was in the inactive reserves. They sent me a letter saying that they discharged me from active service to convenience of the government because my daughter was born before the 1st of April.
What was your homecoming like when you got back?
It was nothing special really, you know. At that time, and what's the name was getting pretty unpopular, you know, the Southeast Asia experience or whatever. So it was pretty quiet, but Oneida here was pretty supportive of any veterans that served that came back. That's one thing that around here, around Oneida, they were always supportive of veterans, you know. So that was a good thing. I came back and I went right to playing baseball. I used to play baseball, so I joined one of the baseball teams and started playing ball right away as soon as I got home.
Okay. So you started playing ball. What else were you doing, or what did you do after?
Well, I found a job right away. Went to work at a paper mill. I worked for a U.S. paper mill for a few years. My dad was working there, so I used to help him go back and forth to work, and then I worked there. But I didn't never like inside work, paper mill work. So I worked there for like 3 years, and then I quit and found other work. And I worked pouring concrete. I worked pouring walls with a construction company. And then when a job came up here at Site 1 in 1968 for home building, I signed on for that, and then I got hired. And we built homes here at Site 1 and also the first stretch of homes at Site 2. And that's how I got into the building construction trade.
So, do you want to talk more about your what you did after, like for the tribe? What else you've done?
Yeah, it's like when I worked for the tribe, we were pretty much a unsewered community. But before that, I had other jobs where I signed on and worked with home building business, mostly HUD homes. And then in 1974, a job came up, and I had started my own construction company. So I bid 25 units at Site 2. And I put up the first 5 units and finished them. And then the company, I was working for Wisconsin Indian Development, and they wanted to put a lot more people on. So then they asked me if they could hire me to run the job, and they'd just put people on, and I would run the job and supervise all the workers. So I did that, and we finished that in like in the early summer of 1975. And Wisconsin Indian Development was the Menominees, Lac de Flambeau, and they ran it out of Wausau. And I worked for them until that job was over. And they had another job after that one up in Oneida, and they wanted me to go up there and run that, but I wouldn't go up there. I had other work down here I could do rather than go up to Oneida and work. And so after that job at Site 2, I started my own construction company up again, and then I worked locally anywhere around Green Bay here or whatever, So we used to build like 52 units a year.
It's a lot.
And then we did that till like 1980, and then Carter administration pretty much jacked the interest rate so high that building pretty much come to a halt. So then I went to NWTC for 2 years for architecture. And when I got done with that, then I worked on another housing project, and then the tribe was looking for somebody to run their home improvement program and put wells and septics in for them. So I took that job around in 1982. And then I started doing some fact-finding analysis and stuff on the facilities in the reservation here, that we basically were an unsewered communities. So I was able to put a lot of facts together, and we were able to get a sewer project out here in 1992. And I did home improvement projects, VA roads projects, and ran the sewer and water and well and septic department. And I did pretty much did those things until I retired, But that was really very satisfying, for me to do those kind of jobs and raise the standard of living here. The tribal school, we couldn't have a tribal school without sewer and water. We couldn't have none of these facilities that we have now without sewer and water. So you got to have the infrastructure before you can build and develop. So that's basically what I did, was plan and build.
Okay. Have you attended any reunions?
Yeah, I attend my class reunions.
Any military ones?
No, I don't.
Marines? What surprised you about joining the Marine? Did anything?
No, it's like everybody else says it's really bad and really hard and whatever, and I didn't really find that to be that much difficult, But I always worked hard and stay physically fit and all that, so maybe that's why it wasn't that hard for me like it might have been, And I was mentally into it, so a lot of things that might have bothered somebody else didn't bother me. It's like I always had my focus on what I had to do, and
Let's see. Do you feel that, or how do you feel that joining the Marines changed your life?
well, because because I had a hard time going to school, and that it gave me an opportunity to prove I could really, you know, be the top if that's what I wanted to be, and leadership and all those things that they train you to do. I used that to my advantage. After I got out of the service, I was always in a leadership type position, and I could always see what had to be done. And one of the things that the Marine Corps always said was, there's no such thing as can't. You don't think you can't do it, because you put your mind to it, you can do it, you know. So that's basically the attitude I always had there, you know. It's like, you can do it if you put your mind to it.
And then just one more question, just if you would like to give like a summary of how you feel about your experience in the military.
Yeah, I think it was a good thing for me, but the thing of it is like I say, that the Marine Corps life is a tough life, and for me, I know friends of mine that they had broken families because they had to spend so much time overseas or away from their family. So in my mind, it's not a good life for a family person. You know, to me, anybody that joins the Marine Corps and like my age, 18 or whatever it is, you should probably stay single and not, you know, not try to get married. A lot of guys got married when they were in California. They dated different girls, and before they go overseas, they got married, and a lot of them ended up with a broken home, you know. Or sometimes they got children, and they're away from those children a lot. Even the old sergeants and stuff like that, they got families at home that they don't see for years at a time, you know. So it's not a good life for a family life. It's a good life for a single person, you know, as long as you don't end up in combat all the time.
And then do you have anything else that you want to add?
Not really. It's like, no, it's like I said, to me, the people should be aware of, this is like February now, this is, like I said, this is the anniversary of the landing of on Iwo Jima, and people should study that stuff and find out, you know, how bad it really is, you know, how bad it can be.
Well, thank you for your service, and thank you for your time.
I appreciate it.